r/AskReddit. Misunderstood girlfriends of Reddit. Why did your so think you were crazy? Recently seeing a guy for about 3 weeks. My phone ended up with a virus, or hacked or something, and it looked like I was getting incoming calls, texts and voicemails from my contacts, but it wasn't them. One of them came from him, and when I mentioned it to him, he got really freaked out, and got stuck on this "somebody doesn't want us to be together" kick. It only gets worse from here, he said. I reset my phone, and haven't had problems since, except a burst of attempts logging into my accounts, because they no longer had access through my phone, but I now have a bunch of shiny new passwords. But he doesn't believe me, and refuses to see me again, until I tell him which of my friends did it. Like he refuses to believe hacks exist or something, and think I have some crazy plan with my trashy friends. I'm a professional in my 30s with not very many friends, who are also all professionals in their 30s. Don't know what his game was, but trying to make me seem crazy or full of drama just made him seem naive and paranoid and crazy. If you go through my history, there's another post in a dating sub where I talk about how socially inept he is, but aside from that, he's a wonderful man. I think he just has serious people issues. Dating in your 30s is hard. Some of these people are single for a good/bad reason. Basically, for wanting him to take time for me and think of me as a top priority once in a while. Relevant later on, he was a film student. He lived long distance from my hometown, college out of state, would be back home for school breaks. He was also pretty manipulative and emotionally abusive. There were so many instances where he wouldn't talk to me or even message me for an entire day, more often, and sometimes for several, less often. It wouldn't be a big deal, but he'd have pictures of him goofing around with friends during the days he never messaged me once. Then he'd come to visit. After not seeing me for months, his first day back was always spent with family, which is totally fine, but then the next several days were still with family and he would never invite me along. He would claim he just didn't think to invite me, and I was being dramatic, but it was stuff like going to a movie with his family he didn't want me to come with, or his grandparents who he didn't even like coming over. He spent this time with his family for the most part, staying away from them. Then when I'd see his family, they'd always ask why I didn't come, then ask my ex why he didn't invite me. He also never said no to his family. Let's say he's back for 5 days. He would maybe spend 1 day with me. He always claimed he didn't want to tell his parents no, and that was why whenever he did have free time was spent filming with friends. I could come along, but pretty much just sat while he directed them all. Sometimes he'd want me to be part of whatever he was filming, but I always had to be either a slutty type character, since I was the only girl and it'd be a small part. It did kind of hurt he never wanted me to be a bigger role than any of his stuff, but it was because he made me feel I was always doing a terrible job. So when I'd ask him to say no to his family, who he didn't like, once in a while, so I could see him alone for even a day, I was being controlling and tearing him away from his family. When I'd try to get his attention while filming, I was trying to sabotage his interests. Later on in the relationship, when I tried to talk about my depression, I was just trying to get attention and being needy. When I talked about things I was interested, I was obsessed in an unhealthy way with it. When I wasn't actively trying to be funny by literally acting like I was an idiot, I was being boring. Sad thing, I believed all this for 4 years. The last year I started to realize what a shell of myself I was. I met a lot of friends. I honestly had no friends who stayed in my town for college, and had a hard time meeting new ones until 4 years in, who I felt I could be myself around and not be ridiculed. There was also a guy who really liked me and actually wanted to hear me talk about my interests and liked being around me when I wasn't forcing myself to be funny. I just realized that my ex was sucking the happiness from my life, and there were plenty of people who would like me for me. When I broke up with him, it was over a 10-minute phone call. I cried for only half an hour and then never again. That guy is also now my boyfriend for 3 years, and we plan on getting married. Edit to add that he has since been diagnosed with schizophrenia and told me Satan visits him in the mirror. which is sad, but who's the crazy one now? He calls me a controlling bitch who is trying to police his speech when I ask him to show me respect by not calling me a cunt, retard, race traitor and commie over political disagreements. I don't even discuss my views with him anymore because of this automatic explosion of violent childish name calling, yet he still says those things to me simply for not agreeing with him. Even remaining silent triggers his newfound obsession with the alt-right and he flies off the handle just like those overzealous SJWs he hates so much. For someone who hates the term safe space he sure has an extreme need for one. He tried to start a fight over politics today and got outrageously upset that I would not take the bait. So he spewed his typical responses of retarded commie cunt who wants to give all of his money to welfare queens and has taken to playing Alex Jones, Trump speeches and a variety of alt-right videos at top volume in an attempt to piss me off. This was his response to my silence. I do not engage and have not in over a year. It has been my ultimate test of patience and I worked retail for 3 years. I'm just sitting in our bedroom stoned playing on Reddit and watching random funny YouTube videos. The BuzzFeed surströmming SP video never gets old. If anyone has suggestions of good funny content let me know. It's been a good peaceful night. I never resort to name calling and I'm getting a bit fed up of being the only person in this relationship who shows respect. At times it feels as though he has a deeper love for those he parrots than me. Oh well, just keep swimming. He told me early on that his exes had tried to change him by telling him what to wear and how to appear in public. I go out with him a few times. His entire closet consisted of 10 to 20-year-old free XL t-shirts and baggy jeans from the 90s. None of it fit him. Many of his clothes would have small holes. He was proud of not going clothes shopping. Maybe he thought buying clothes was an activity only reserved for girls, who knows. He'd put clips on his underwear to hold them in place because the elastic bands were no longer elastic. This guy's university educated and has a good job. I told him to get new clothes and wear things that fit him properly. He told me that he thought I was different, but it turned out that all girls are the same. They all wanted to change him. We obviously didn't last a long time and I became the crazy ex who was artificial and couldn't accept him the way he was and tried to change him and blah blah and who gives a shit. I'm now extra sensitive to holes in clothes. It's a good test. Tell a guy about it and if he repairs it / throws it out then I know he cares about his self-image in my opinion. If he doesn't, then he's probably too busy gaslighting you to be introspective in any way. I was a punk rock teenager. I had all kinds of posters and flyers all over my room, including a whole wall dedicated to local bands. I started dating a guy in one of those local bands, so there were already some pictures of him and his bandmates and flyers on my wall. I figured out that I could draw on my TV, big tube TV, with a whiteout pen. So I drew some pictures and wrote out band names. Then, on the bevel, I wrote his name. He apparently didn't understand that you can remove whiteout pen from a TV with a fingernail or the scrubby side of a sponge in like 10 seconds. He acted like I had carved his name into my forearm. He broke up with me because I was obsessed with him. We had been dating about 2 weeks. He didn't tell me why we were breaking up. I found this out from his friends who proceeded to harass me for a month and hearing rumors that I was crazy. I saw him years later and we were chatting. He knew I was dating an acquaintance of his and asked how that guy felt about his name being on my TV. I explained that I removed his name promptly upon returning home from him breaking up with me with a moist paper towel. He looked very sheepish. Dated a boy for about a month and a half and I asked him one day if it was alright to make it Facebook official. He said sure, go for it, so I did. About 2 weeks later he breaks up with me because he thought I was just claiming to be asexual for attention and that by now we would have been going at it like rabbits. It was no big deal to me because obviously he wasn't in it for my personality. However, I realized when I changed my status to single that he never accepted the request. No big deal. It's not like we dated for a long time or even went out much. He was lazy and only wanted to Netflix and chill. Again, I'm not into chill. That's when I found out that he had been telling people that he had never dated or met me. So people thought I was a crazy stalker for a while until I showed the message from him saying it was alright to post on FB that we were in a relationship, along with a lot of other messages calling me baby and hot stuff sprinkled with a ton of innuendos. On the plus side of this story, a lot of people actually told him it was too bad he never dated me because I'm pretty cute and nice. I dated this guy for 2 years and wanted out of the relationship for a whole year and a half. He was extremely manipulating and controlling to the point where I spent every single day at his house in bed with him. He was depressed, so we never did anything. We fought all the time because I was always trying to break up with him, but he would just bring me back in. He now thinks I'm crazy because I broke it off while I was overseas through text. I couldn't take it anymore. He was sending me weird texts constantly while I was trying to enjoy my time there. It was so annoying. After that he started freaking out on me, telling me I'm crazy and manipulative and that's why no one loves me, as I'm with a group of 25 beautiful friends touring a beautiful city. He wouldn't leave me alone and started harassing me and showing up at my workplace and threatening my friends and family. Then he made an Instagram account showing all of my nude pictures, which I never knew he took. I got the police involved when he was threatening to send those pictures to my employer. He then tried to press charges on me for larceny, so I came back with a restraining order. Anyways, now he spends his days ranting about me to Facebook and slurring my name. But no one listens to him because he's always fucked up on drugs. He left me without telling me he was leaving me, so I proceeded with life on the assumption that our relationship status remained unchanged. This happened to a friend of mine, and it was very confusing. From what I understand, they'd been together 5 years or so, and went to a wedding together where he disappeared for 2 days. They had a fight when she found out he ran off with a girl for those 2 days, and he suggested maybe breaking up, which she said she didn't want. So, they went on living together, sleeping in the same bed but no sex, for several months until one day he suggests maybe it's time she find a new place. It's probably time. Very confused, she asks for clarification. Apparently, he'd been under the assumption they'd broken up 5 months prior and had been seeing the other girl, and my friend was under the impression that since they'd never finished that fight they were still together. In the end, it came out that by time he'd finally suggested them separating, he'd already legally married the other girl, and she was pregnant. And the finale, he and new girl moved into an apartment about 100 feet away from her place. That type of breakup is the most hurtful way to end things. It happened to me. He said that I was crazy, clingy, irrational because I wanted to know why he suddenly ceased all contact with me. When he came back from a holiday, he wouldn't respond to my texts or calls, so I thought something bad must have happened to him. So naturally, I went over to his house to rule out that hypothesis. I knocked on his door and was shocked to see him sitting there on his computer. That apparently took things too far, and he refused to talk to me about whether we were together or not. He requested to meet up in person in the city the next day in a very public place. I agreed because I just wanted to know. He said that I had to say it was over because he didn't have the heart to do it. Also, he didn't want to see me cry, hence his choice of location. So he didn't want to take ownership of his own feelings and actions. Nor could he handle the slightest bit of negative emotion, so he thought public humiliation would deter me from crying. I cried anyway and told him to fuck off and never talk to me again. A few months later, he contacted me. He wanted to get back together. I agreed, but in a friends with benefits situation, nothing more. He fell for me again, but I didn't for him. A few weeks later, I ghosted him, just like he did to me months before. When he pleaded for an explanation, I told him coldly, you were getting too clingy, and I didn't have the heart to break up with you. I didn't want to make you cry. That upset him greatly. I told him I'd moved on and found someone new and to never contact me again. He texted me every year on my birthday, Christmas, and Easter for many years. I continued to tell him to fuck off. He didn't get it until I said, "I'm married now, leave me alone." I know it was immature to treat him as he treated me, but I don't regret it. I'm hoping he learned from his mistakes. I learned from that experience and didn't go for douchebags with his personality qualities. I found my now husband a little bit after that experience, who is the most caring, considerate human being that I know. When I found out that my then boyfriend was cheating with a coworker for weeks, I took everything I owned from the apartment we had together. Just so happens I owned everything except his computer. For fun I also took the light bulbs, because I found the girl's clothes sitting in our bedroom when I got home. My mother's then boyfriend was so enraged I was treated like that he shit on his keyboard. Honest to God, I didn't know he did this until he decided to sue me years later, 2 weeks after I had my son. Turns out he also posted a video titled "Never Move In with a Crazy Bitch" on Facebook. I just wanted to inconvenience him a bit with not having light, but now half of my town thinks I'm batshit insane because my mum's boyfriend had no chill. Edit. I completely forgot to add that my ex still has no idea it was human shit. He thought it was dog shit I brought inside. Because I reacted to things. If I was sad, I cried. If I was happy, I laughed and smiled. If those things happened in the same day, I was crazy. It was like he didn't want me to show emotion other than a constant pleasant smile. And I was screwed anyway, because I had resting bitch face, so when I was listening to a song or deep in thought on a car ride, he always thought something was wrong. Also, he traveled extensively for work and I never really saw much of him. He'd be gone for 2 or 3 weeks at a time and then be home for 1 or 2 days. God forbid I would be sad when he left or frustrated in any way because we didn't spend a decent amount of time together. And don't bring it up. Can't you see his vision? He's only doing this for us, for our future. So no, he won't be home for your birthday, and please don't make any plans for anything that involves him, because he honestly doesn't ever know if he can make it. Because you are not a priority. Ever. And don't be sad about that. You're crazy. And he's the one who left me after 5 years. My ex called, and still does call, me crazy to everyone, because I always thought he was cheating on me. Turns out, he was. Every time. He even went so far as to make me question whether I actually was crazy. But it turns out no. Every time I was right. Example, I once accidentally saw messages on his phone from a woman we were both friends with saying, "I can't believe we slept together. I never thought I'd sleep with you." I think he thought I saw it because I asked him about it and asked him to show me his phone. When he got back from the shop, the messages were gone. Broken conversation. He'd deleted them and then tried to deny their existence altogether. He eventually admitted it that night after hours of fighting. So, yeah. There's that. I don't discount my intuition anymore. I stayed with him for years because I loved him and he was the father of my child. One of the best moments for me emotionally and mentally when I realized that it was toxic and got out of there 6 years later. I'm happier than I've ever been. Unfortunately not crazy. I wasn't quite his girlfriend, but we were as good as dating. At every opportunity he could, he would tell me something he disliked about my appearance. "Why do you have hair on? Insert body part here. You should shave it. Why do your boobs not touch each other? That's weird." They were so mundane, but so stupid and affected my psyche. He would tell me that he loved me, but in public I didn't exist. I was no one. I could only play by his rules and that was it. It fucked me up that I was so enamored with someone who barely gave a fuck. Then, overnight, he told me that he didn't want me, that he didn't want to continue, and just dropped it, but wanted to be friends. I couldn't do it. So I stopped talking to him, because I had to get over it, and I couldn't do it if he kept fucking talking to me. And every day he would try to talk to me, and I'd tell him to please stop, until he was pestering me so incessantly that I'd be screaming in his face to leave me the fuck alone. And he'd just smile and laugh at me and continue. but one day he texted me and asked me what my deal was. I told him flat out that he treated me like fucking garbage and I wasn't going to take it. He freaked out, begged for me to still be his friend, told me that I would be treated like a princess and nothing less, etc. I told him that the trust was gone and it was going to take a while for it to come back. He said he was fine with that. He wasn't. I ended up cutting him out of my life altogether. I'm glad I did. It hurt to find out later that a girl I was friends with immediately jumped on him the second that he and I were done, but I'm over it because she realized he was a piece of shit too. As long as we all understand. This was long, but it happened to me 2 years ago and still eats at me sometimes, even though that person and I are far removed. Not just crazy, but in his words, a fucking cold-hearted bitch. After 4 years together, apparently I should be used to him giving me the silent treatment for weeks and not saying WTF I did in the first place and just go back together with him like nothing happened. When he forgave me, I should have accepted that he doesn't like hospitals in my house, and he was totally right in not wanting to visit me after an accident I had. I should have accepted all the cheating, gaslighting and other abuse he threw at me. A fucking crazy cold-hearted bitch, but I'm free, at least. Edit. Hey, guys, I'm just adding here the meaning of gaslight. For those who asked, I'm lazy so I'm using the Urban Dictionary definition. Okay. A form of intimidation or psychological abuse, sometimes called ambient abuse, where false information is presented to the victim, making them doubt their own memory, perception and quite often, their sanity. The classic example of gaslighting is to switch something around on someone that you know they are sure to notice, but then deny knowing anything about it, and to explain that they must be imagining things when they challenge these changes. A more psychological definition of gaslighting is an increasing frequency of systematically withholding factual information from and/or providing false information to the victim, having the gradual effect of making them anxious, confused, and less able to trust their own memory and perception. They also show two examples, being your spouse begins telling you things that never really happened. For instance, he says that last week he told you he was going to go to the bar with his buddies this Monday night, but you never remember him telling you that. Or maybe your boss gets angry because you didn't prepare the report he asked you to. When you remind him that he usually prepares that particular report, he snaps that he told you to take care of it a few days ago because he was too busy. However, you know he never asked you to do so. I was crazy and emotionally abusive because I became upset when he told me he cheated on me. I was crazy for considering it cheating / a betrayal / cruelty. We were together for 5 years after I left my home and everything behind to live with him. He ended the relationship and abandoned me in a place where I knew no one. Shortly afterwards, he pushed and pushed to reconcile. I was reluctant, but decided to give him a chance. He had made female friends in the short period of time that we were apart and swore that they were not a threat after one of them revealed a crush on him. He said he couldn't end that short-lived friendship because she would kill herself. I was facing a fatal illness for one loved one and about to find out if another had cancer. The one who was getting another X-ray to determine if a mass had grown and was indeed cancer was / is the most important being in my life. My ex was supposed to be there with me, for me. He staged the end of the relationship. He made bizarre accusations, among other tactics. After I got the news of the fatal illness, he told me he was moving across the country. I felt hurt and abandoned. Not long afterwards, he sent a text, and I ignored it. He claims that he cheated because I ignored the text. He actually doesn't believe it was cheating as he believed it was over. I had to ask him if he had done anything, as his behavior was so bizarre. He then refused to answer my phone calls. I sent a lot of texts expressing how hurt I was, but I never attacked him or his character. He said the texts traumatized him. He then went on to discuss what to do about our relationship with his new friends, including the one he was now fucking. He refused to talk to me. He never admitted to any wrongdoing and said my reaction, expression of deep sorrow, was emotional abuse, and any psychologist who reviewed my texts would agree and believe there was something wrong with me. This happened months ago, and every day is a struggle to be alive. I'm disabled and can't afford to return home. I don't know anyone here. We were together for 5 years. I left my life behind to have one with him. I wanted that happy family I never had. I lost that. It's been devastating. Because I trusted other men too easily, and they'd hurt me, even though he's the one who verbally put me down, chased off friends and family, stole money from me, and dealt drugs behind my back, putting me at risk. When he cheated someone out of said drugs and she called my house threatening to cut me into little pieces over it. Oh, and gave me an STD and later hit me, at which point I left him for good. But I was the crazy one. I was also crazy when I left town, got a job in a different city 3 states away, married a really nice guy, and wasn't happy to see him move 3 fucking states and get a job at my company just so he could berate me about how crazy I was for marrying someone else. He was quickly fired from that job. I told him I wasn't leaving my husband for him, and I decided the only crazy in me was giving this asshole way too many chances. In fact, that has been the extent of any insanity I possess. The idea that an asshole will ever be anything but an asshole. It's a fault I finally managed to cure myself of. Thank you so much for watching the whole video. Please leave a like and subscribe.